Hi, everybody. We're excited to share this with you today. Estrada is really a culmination of everything that we've been working on and thinking about over the last few years, um, as it relates to automation and really business and process improvement within CostPoint. So, what we've done is really taken a look at our users, user feedback, employee feedback, how our team uses the product. And over time, we started to see trends in places and things where it would be better if there was a little bit more automation, a little bit faster productivity, and with the spirit of AI and all things automation happening, it just seemed like the right time to put forth something that would make a lot of sense and would really speed up operations, lower G&A cost, and overall just give the back office team a little bit more control over their day by eliminating some of the manual, repetitive processes. Hi, Tony. We just started. So, what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to walk through a little bit of the system architecture, explain to you what we've done and kind of how we do it. And then I'm going to go ahead and give you a little sample. We're going to go into a few areas of the system, take about 30 minutes, and then we'll move on to the fun part. So with that, um, you know, a little bit of architecture. So, the Astrata platform is a couple of components, one of which is an accounting component. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, that's where we have our direct connections. So things like Ramp and Plaid and ADP, Cash Pro for Bank of America, where we've built direct partnerships with those organizations and have integrated their connections into the platform. We also have other APIs that we've built and kind of repurpose time after time. Most popular, you see, I put the payroll providers off there to the right. So that's one piece of the platform. The other part is our portal. So the portal is where vendors can register. For those of you who use bill.com, similar in nature, but vendors can register, upload information, and then that data can be pushed over to CostPoint automatically so that you don't have to maintain your vendors any longer. We've also built a barcoding app as it relates to inventory management, manufacturing orders, sales orders, and inventory physical counts. So we will talk about that a little bit, and then we are building our way towards an employee portal in the future. So for today, we're not going to talk too much about that. But the whole idea here is that as you build your connections or use different parts of the system. We've built an approval workflow that allows everything to be approved and reviewed prior to going to Deltek. So if for some reason a vendor makes a change and you don't want that to update your vendor file, you can stop it along the way. If an employee change isn't approved, you can stop it along the way. Otherwise, things can automatically update. The system is designed with no uploads and downloads, imports and exports. So everything is API and activity driven. So there's no reason for you to upload anything or download or do any sort of file extractions. Everything happens real time as you move data through your systems and processes. So the areas we focused on first were credit cards and banks. You could see those on the right. We added a vendor workflow and management, so allowing you to invite vendors to your systems and collect data from them, uh, which includes invoice automation, so that will eliminate some of the fraud AP that gets processed today. We have our barcode mobile processing for manufacturers. We recently added an employee action process, so things like salary changes, status changes, project changes, and then we have a prepaid expenses module as well. So those are the areas. We're going to start today with the credit card automation. So I'm going to show you that. We'll talk a little bit about how it works. The effective process here is that we're looking for a way to connect to credit card data, have it feed in on a daily basis, and give you the opportunity to route that data wherever it needs to go, whether it's an expense report or right to accounts payable. Attaching receipts, splitting transactions, all of that can be done on a daily basis with your activity and then routed over to cost point. So let's take a look at that first. Okay, so this is the Astrata platform. Within Astrata, we have a credit card module, right? Um, Walk back in. Speaking of login, our system's going to force you to use a single sign-on component, so it'll ensure security along the way. So our credit card data is broken out by month. You can set these dates and specify and arrange them as needed so that if your credit cards are not um, monthly driven and have an interim date, you can separate them as you see fit. You see here all of our charges do come into the system here on a daily basis, right? And your job is going to be to code them to project account and organization or respective employee. So in the case of this charge, if I wanted to code this charge, I can simply look up real time from cost point, my projects, my accounts, and my orgs. This is going to work the same way as your cost point process works. So if you want to, if you pick a project, it's going to limit the accounts and respective orgs according to what you've selected. If this is a common charge or recurring, I can hit this little memory button. Memory button is going to let us save this for the future. So anytime a Hilton charge comes in, it will automatically route it to this account project combination. So you don't have to do that each time. And then if this was to go to an employee instead, if you look up here, you can see I've sent this off to Rice's expense report to be applied to his expense report. So it's going to default in your credit card payable account. Right? And lastly, if we do need to split a charge, we can do so here by simply saying how many splits we need. And then we can put in the amount for each transaction and then assign it the respective project and account. One last thing to note is if we are going to code or for expense our transactions right here in the system, you can click on any record and attach a receipt as needed. You can also modify the description so when it goes to cost point, our description is complete. At the end of your statement period, you can simply come here and send the accounts payable transaction over to cost point. It'll send each row as a line in the base of the transaction with all the details provided here. Any notes you put in here will show up in the notes field as well. Now, likewise, if you do have multiple cards with multiple employees, you can actually assign the cards here. And each card can be assigned to an employee, and then it by default will assign it to that employee and the card transaction, the credit card clearing account automatically, where you can then do a mass route and send everything to expense in one shot per day. So this is a little bit about our credit card process. You can have as many credit cards as you want. You can connect them all. We leverage Plaid for our account management. So if you did want to add a new card, you could simply go through the link process. If you have Ramp, you can use it through the Ramp Direct Connect to allow you to connect as many cards as you'd like. Now, moving back to um, our credit card process, you can see everything's routed. You can use the auto match feature. You can use your attachment. There's a quick diagram here. I won't go into too much detail. I'm going to leave it on the screen. This is really how we in Astrata look at credit card transactions and how we determine what needs to be done with them. Right. So a couple of highlights. We can set those statement periods to any statement frequency or date range you like. By assigning the employees, we can automatically code the transactions. If not, we can use that memory function to do so. And then our bulk send to expense allows you to get them out the door quickly if you need to. Lastly, at the end of the month, you can run a PDF of the transactions and all the receipts if you need it. Okay, so that was our credit card process. Let's talk a little bit about vendors. So our vendor process is really designed to make and empower our vendors to communicate with us directly. So in order to do that, PCI has developed a portal. This portal allows our vendors to register their information, name, address, supplier information, basic accounting information, W-9 information, um, socioeconomic data, and then documents. So here's where your vendors can upload a W-9 form. We can have a supplier questionnaire if you need one, certificates of insurance, and then any additional documents. Where we have a template for each, you see the template here. So if your vendor needs to download it and fill it in, they can do that here and here for easy use. Once this is submitted, what happens is your Astrata platform will accept your vendor in our managed vendor invitations. So you can see we have a pending invitation that we've sent out to somebody. We can send new invitations out to new vendors along the way, and we can even bulk invite. So if you have a bunch that you want to send out, you're already using CostPoint, you want to start using a vendor management tool, we can invite them in bulk via CSV and send the email automatically to those vendors to register. Once they go through the registration process, we can look in manage vendors and you can see any pending vendors that are awaiting approval. Whether this is for a new vendor or modifications to an existing vendor, you can take it through that approval process and see the status of it immediately in CostPoint once it's approved. Right. Now, our completed vendors, we can take a look at any vendor and see what's going on with them. We can see any vouchers they have, or we can invite them to the system if they're not already a member. Now, the best part of this is that this also includes a voucher processing tooling. So what happens is we white label each vendor as they're assigned and accepted into your system. And what that means is that we basically register their email address as a valid email address to receive AP expenses from. By doing that, we have an email address that each vendor can send their expenses to for your company, right? That's a company specific email. And that email address then makes sure against the list of approved vendors that the voucher is in fact a real voucher. It will read the voucher, attach it to our voucher screen, where you can then take a look at an incomplete voucher and complete that voucher automatically. So this allows our team to see, right? Your accounting team to see the voucher, see any cost out, apply a cost allocation, any check information if needed, and also track an audit history. So if you wanted to get this routed for an approval, you could assign an approver and um, route out your voucher for approval before it even gets to cost point. Approved vouchers can automatically be sent as soon as they're approved. So that's how our vendor process works. Now, you look, I built you a little, here's a little sample of the workflow example so you can see what it looks like as people move it. The nice part about the approver process is that if a voucher gets sent to you for approval and you are not the approving authority for that, you can simply select the person that is, or select someone from accounting to send it back to them, and they will get notified that they have something they need to take a look at, and then they can reassign it accordingly. So track all of that here, so you'll always see what's going on with a voucher. From a notification perspective, all of our vouchers are routed for notification through email and through the notification on the top of the screen. So if you look here, we have a notification system. It's going to tell you what needs to happen, and I'll touch more on these in a minute. Now, from a design perspective on our vendor portal workflow, you can see we've got a built out design architecture that allows you to follow the vendor, follow the information, and see how things move from cost point to Astrata and back and forth. This is here, and we can certainly share this with you as well, right? So this is our vendor portal, right, which you saw earlier, and then this is the AP workflow that's associated with it. Now, what we're going to do from here is we're going to take a look at our employee action process. So this is something we've newly released, and this is going to allow us to handle really all those activities that occur once an employee is an employee, and has just life changes and activities that occur in the business. So, for example, if someone has to be added to a new workforce for time charging, if somebody wants to change if you need to change the status of an employee, say they're going to go from full time to part time, or they're going to change their address, or or you need to change a name or anything like that, or salary, all of that can be done through a form, and that form can go through a workflow to be approved. And then once it's approved, it automatically is going to update cost point. So whether it's a new salary record, whether it's a new workforce record, those things will automatically be created simply by someone completing the form. All right, so let's take a look at that next. Go back in our Strata, take a look at employees. We have action forms are here, right? So here's some that are sitting in the queue. You can see, so this one that's completed, if we look, we simply see what it was, what the updated information is. So you can see we added a phone number here, a labor location, right, and an address. And I can also see the history of what happened. So who approved it, and then it was final approved. It was two levels of approval in this case, right? Before it was sent over to cost point. So I have a little note here, just changed address. Now, additionally, we can create action forms here. So if I wanted to create a new one, I could simply search for the employee I'm looking for. I can pick what I want to change. So in this case, I'll take a look at personal info, right? This is what exists today. You would change the thing you want to change. So maybe we'll add an apartment here, right? Everything else, we'll make sure our labor location is correct. And then we'll hit submit. On our submit, we're going to select an approver, right? Of who would improve this. And if you wanted to add any notes, you could, and then hit submit, right? And this is going to sit this in the pending queue, right? So we have pending and we have completed for status on the forms, right? And then any number of things can be done here. So we have quite a few options, and they're always adding more for that. We also have the ability to route same general process for approval. So as you saw in the voucher, so things can continue to be moved and reapproved and reviewed until it gets to the right person. Right? That data is going to automatically update our employees. If you wanted to do a manage employee action, you could also do it here. And you can see a history of the action forms that were completed for each employee right in their employee record. We can also create a new one here if need be, if you're in HR. So that's here for you as well. Right. So just looking back at our again at our workflow, we can see some examples here of forms, right? Sent for approval, right? Approved and then updated in employee, whether it's workforce or employment record. All right. So that takes us through the employee action process. Um, I want to touch on prepaid expenses next. So let's take a quick look at how prepaid expenses are handled. And I'll cover the question on attachments in just a second for you. So our prepaid expenses has an interesting flow. So prepaids can either be entered here manually through Create, or they can feed in from accounts payable, right? Whether it's a PO voucher or a regular voucher. If we if it is assigned to the prepaids account, which is determined here in our accounts, right? And these are our cost point accounts. We're just going to select the ones that are prepaids. And then when you come into prepaids, anything that has to be processed or is going to be queued up. So you'll see the status says queued. This is a sample one that was fed in, right? It still needs to be processed, but it's ready to go. And then if we look at one that's in progress, you can see we've got our start date, our purchase date, the total amount, the duration it's running for. And then down here we have the allocations. So when you're setting up one for the first time, you'll set the expense account or accounts if you need to add rows. And then you can save and copy that down. So once you set it up once, it's going to allocate it for all of the corresponding activities below. You can change it at any time in the future for anyone. So if in 6 months we have to make a change, you can change it there and it'll push down to the remainder if you'd like. Now, once we've got them set up, you'll see we have one simple setting in here, and that is what day of the month you want your prepaid journal to process. So you'll select the day you want that entry to show up in Cost Point and save it. And then over here is a sample of those journal entries. So if I click on some details, you can see this is the one that went over in the one entry that went over for a test transaction. If we look a little further down, see if we have one in here with, here we go. So this one was a bunch of prepaids all in one shot. So you can see what we do is we grab the description of the prepaid and then the increment of the transaction. So this is 8 of 12, this is 1 of 23. So you can see how many you have left and where you are with things. And this is tethered into the description that shows up in the journal entry. Now, once that's done, everything is sent to cost point and you're ready to go. And you can see the fact that they've succeeded in their transaction and they put back our journal ID and what period it's in so you know exactly where it is in your system. Right? So, Jill, you had a question about the W-9s on the vendor portal. We transfer them into the Astrata vendor screen here. We do not transfer them to CostPoint because there's not a file storage in CostPoint. It's actually your SharePoint. So we could do it. It would be a custom connection to your specific SharePoint folder. Right. So this is our prepaid. So the last thing I wanted to touch on um, in our in our document on prepaids is um, just a little bit of information about our banks. And then I have one other thing I wanted to share with you before we switch over um, to meats and cheeses. So, um, our bank connection is designed to support pulling in both deposits and receipts. Deposits are receipts, so deposits and accounts payable activity, right? So what we'll do is we'll show you how that looks in the system. So within our within our integrations, will select banks. Um, we'll select our. Let me go back a little bit. So here is our bank transactions, right? So you can see we've got our transactions in here. And negatives or deposits, just the way the bank presents them. So let's convert these to deposits from payroll. This is sample data, so it says transfer payroll. Um, So if we have some deposits here, and these will come in every day, what you'll simply do is go to your deposit screen. You'll take a look at your open accounts receivable on the right, and you have your cash deposits from your bank on the left. When you find the one that matches up, and you can search here if you'd like, but let's assume for a second that that these two match up, right? So you can take your two transactions and drop them in, and you hit send to cost point. This will automatically create a cash receipt record for each of these invoices in your cash receipt module within cost point. Now, if, for example, this is not something that's related to an invoice, maybe it's interest income, right? We can simply click add row and you can type in the information. Likewise, if you are short paid on an invoice, you can edit the invoice that you're short paid. So if this one was short paid, I would just change the invoice amount, say to 10,000, and then it will put the 2,000 remaining back in your open receivables once you process this transaction, right? And you can see this did gray out because I don't have a matched amount to the deposit. So it's only going to let us send complete deposits to cost point. So that's how our deposits work. So the idea is it's very simple. It should be a very simple click and drag. In most cases, the dollars will match up and you click send. So in 2 clicks, we can record a cash receipt in cost point. Now on the payment side, let's select some items for payment. Once these are set, they typically, as they pull in, it's typically pretty accurate. For payment, you have a couple choices. Payments can either be part of an ACH batch, in which case you would mark it as part of an ACH batch, and then you can start putting information in about it. Or maybe you just have the vendor. Maybe this is already entered, so you'll simply pick a vendor and a check number that's associated with this, and that'll mark this off as cleared. Likewise, if this is maybe an auto debit or something that you haven't recorded yet in cost point, you can simply hit create voucher. The system will create a voucher automatically. You just have to select the vendor you want. The dollar amount will be here, the date, all the accounting period information will be here. You simply will fill in the check number and then allocate it to a project um, or account combination that makes sense. If you have a receipt you want to attach, you can attach something as well, right? And then once this is done, it'll be done. Now, once everything is completed, when you come back to your Alt tab, each row that's processed will have a checkbox and turn green, so you'll know what's left to address, and you can simply filter down to unprocessed transactions if need be. Right. So this isn't necessarily a bank reconciliation, but it is going to tell you that every transaction in your bank has in fact been processed in cost point, um, either by organic processing cost point or by pushing a record from here into cost point. The last component we have for this is payroll. So if you have two payroll transactions, and I'll grab a couple just to give you an example. So we've got payroll and payroll, right? What we can do in here is create a payroll template, right? So the payroll template's going to include your standard payroll template. So every project account org that you would put in for every, and the vendor that would be for every payroll. So you'll reuse the template over and over. Payroll dates, you'll set up your payroll dates, fiscal year, pay cycle. And then once you have this set up, you can simply grab transactions and assign them to the payroll, and that will allow it to reconcile your bank payroll transactions with your payroll register, and your timesheet date, so you know which labor is associated with which pay period. Right, so that's here, and you can see we do have some basic data at the top. Right. Okay, so one last item that we've just rolled out, so it's pretty new. And again, here's our bank feed design. But one of the things we've run into over time is that a lot of companies have either second companies or purchase a company or are merging with another business where they have data in QuickBooks and it needs to be migrated into CostPoint. So whether it's you're new to CostPoint, or you're thinking about buying CostPoint, or you're trying to transition away from QuickBooks, we've recently added a new feature, which is a QuickBooks integration. This allows us to connect directly to your QuickBooks online. You would simply come in here and map your accounts from QuickBooks to the CostPoint account you want. So let's just pick an account, right? It does require a project. You'd select the project you want for it. I know those don't match. And an organization, and you would save the mapping. Um, at the bottom here, you can see we have a series of already mapped accounts. Once all your accounts are mapped, we can sync a journal entry, which will create a transaction for all the activities that were in your QuickBooks for the time period selected. So you'll pick your time period, you'll hit load and sync, and it will build you a journal entry for that time period to go into CostPoint. So you can do it by year or by month, and then you can take a look at the output report at the end. So just a little teaser for what's to come, but this is going to be used for integrations for a long time from here. So with that, I'm just going to close out here with a little bit of summary on how we make this happen for you. So one thing to note first, though, and most importantly, this is it's as safe as it can be. So we've hosted everything in AWS GovCloud, similar to the CMMC Level 2 model Deltek is using. Everything is single sign-on, so you'll be using your Active Directory for access. Everything is encrypted, and we're in the process of going through SOC 2 Type 2 audits and preparation for NIST. So we're on um, the path to continuing to secure data. Now, from a deployment perspective, this is a pretty simple process. We need you to sign up through the portal. We need to connect to your cost point, which is probably the longest pole in the tent. We need to submit a ticket to Deltek to get access to your integration and API console. Once we get access to that, we'll automatically connect it to Astrata. And then if we need to connect to anything else, whether it be banks or credit cards or payroll providers, we can run through those connections with you. And then we'll teach you how to use it. And the team here will stay with you for weeks to make sure that you're comfortable doing everything on a regular basis. Right, so pretty simple. Um, we've also made it very cost effective. So the idea is that this should not cost more than the time it takes to complete the tasks. And in the spirit of keeping our G&A low, so we stay competitive and keeping our workforce doing things that are meaningful, we believe we've set a price point that's fair. So based upon the number of users you need, we include all of the modules you saw today in the package, so you don't have to buy it module by module. The only thing we price separately is the different connections that are not related to banks and credit cards. So we can share more with each of you. And if anybody wants to see this in more detail, I'm more than happy to take a deep dive with anybody who's interested.